Welcome to For Profit and for Good, the TV show. My name is Dr. David Jordan, Dean of the School of Business here at Clark University in beautiful Worcester, Massachusetts, just outside of Boston. For Profit and for Good is brought to you by Clark School of Business as we highlight issues at the intersection of business, government, and society. We discuss issues that will drive business forward in the decade ahead, including the impact of AI, climate change, and a host of other business and societal issues which affect us all. Here at the School of Business, we are business-driven and socially focused. I'm very happy to have as our first guest Dr. David Fithian, the 10th president of Clark University. It's an honor to have you with us today, Dr. Fithian, and couldn't be happier that you're going to be speaking to many of our students from literally around the world. So Clark University was founded in 1887 as an illustrious history of scholarship, innovation, and research. Robert Goddard taught here in the 1900s and today is known as the father of modern rocketry. Sigmund Freud's only U.S. lecture on the human psyche was delivered here at Clark University, among many other milestones. So Dr. Fithian, tell us about your journey as a Clarkie yourself, a sociology student here at Clark, now in your role as the 10th president of Clark University.
First, Dean Jordan, let me just say what a pleasure it is to be invited to join you for your first show, and congratulations on the show. Congratulations on many things you've been able to accomplish as Dean of Clark University School of Business. And let me say, you have a choice with what to do with your time, and the fact that after decades of running a complex business successfully, you have chosen to devote your leadership skills to Clark University School of Business is a tremendous benefit for our students, for our faculty, and for the university as a whole. So thank you very much for your role here. I am a Clark alum, and coming back as president is quite an honor and a privilege, and it's not something I take for granted. But it is, for people who know the university, it's a remarkable place. And when I say people who know, it's students who study here, faculty who come and teach here, community organizations and leaders who work with us as a partner. It really is an extraordinary place, and it's extraordinary for a number of reasons. One, some of the history that you cite. We've been at the forefront of a lot of innovation, at creative thinking, at really thinking about the role of the university in the world. And that's another way in which I think Clark really distinguishes itself, is we're a university in the world. You often hear talk of universities being ivory towers, of the real world somehow being something different from what colleges and universities are focused on. And from the very beginning, Clark has always been in the real world, and that's been an important part of our education, is really teaching students about being in the world, solving problems, developing skills. And that's certainly true for a School of Business too. And I think everything that we do as a university really focuses on learning by doing. Yes, students learn a lot in formal instruction in classrooms, but at the same time, they take that learning, not when they're done with their schooling, but in the midst of it and apply it to real world problems. So I think the Clark School of Business has a really important role to play in education today, and it has for the past 40 years.
It's wonderful. Well, let's delve into that a little bit. I'd like to talk to you about this relationship between a liberal arts research institution like Clark University and business education. Do they mix? Are they compatible? What's the role of a business school at a research liberal arts institution?
Yeah, it's a really important one. And just a quick back to history for a moment, if I may. Clark was founded as an all-graduate institution, second only after Johns Hopkins. And so from the very beginning, we were focused on graduate training, of which business is a form of that. We often think of graduate and professional training, but we were looking at postgraduate training. And so the way in which we focus on business education in a sense really is an important part of our institutional DNA. Now, of course, we have a college, and the college is very much at the center of the university, in part because we really see the ways in which undergraduate and graduate and professional education each contribute to the other, and each contributes to the way Clark approaches education. So it's fundamental. Now, if you think about liberal arts, liberal is based on the Latin liber, which technically means freedom, to be free. And there are a number of sort of modern ways in which you can think about the use of that word. One is the freedom to explore lots of areas of study, of interest, lots of disciplinary traditions. There's another way in which it's free from any particular focus. So it's really meant to convey a sense of breadth in one's training and one's studies. But what we've come to really understand is that all education is entwined, that everything that we're studying is connected to something else. And I think if you really think about what business school training is all about, it's about developing a set of skills, by and large about problem solving, also about logistics, right? And increasingly all education is about how things are connected. How do you develop skills, critical thinking skills, skills to speak clearly and write well, skills increasingly around resourcefulness and resiliency. And all these are important skills in thinking about business training. But I'd say increasingly, we've really come to understand business not as something that sits apart. Again, a moment ago I talked about the sense that education somehow sits apart from the real world. Well, I think business education isn't something separate from understanding the way the world works, understanding how to solve complex, intractable problems. And so I really see the two things, liberal arts education, undergraduate study, business education, professional study, is really being critically important to each other.
The world today faces just a host of very challenging issues. And there's a certain ethos about a student who comes to Clark University, and that ethos is, how do we take what we're learning in a classroom and then apply it to real world problems? So climate change, hunger, poverty, a number of issues. But the role of business, does business have in your mind a social responsibility? Should we be considering issues of climate change and a whole host of other issues as part of our business education?
Absolutely. There's no question about it. And again, it's for at least two reasons, probably more than two. One is, again, the skills that one develops in understanding how business works, and whether that's through finance or marketing, sales. You're developing a set of understandings about how people relate to each other. In this case, in a particular area, whether it's commerce, economics, business, management. And again, that doesn't sit apart from everything else that's happening in the world. Right. So, for example, climate. As you know, Clark has a number of historic strengths in climate. We're bringing all those together in the coming year to create a whole new climate school. And I think business, as well as economics and other things, are critically important to this. And if I may, I want to take a minute just to say why that is. People tend to think about climate largely as the physical changes to our environment, right? And we have a lot of data that I think many people share the belief, demonstrate that climate change is real. But for your average citizens, for many people, you don't know how to interpret that data. So you can be awash in data that says sea rise, temperature change, those things are actually happening. But until you understand the effect on your daily life, until you understand the way you can contribute to mitigating climate change through your own actions, it's hard to really appreciate that you have a role to play and you're going to be affected by it. So what am I talking about? I'm talking about the importance of behavioral science in understanding climate change. How do people think? How do they take that data and apply it to their own actions, to their own lifestyle choices, things like that? And I think, similarly, you really have to understand the incredible changes that people will see in commerce, in things like the real estate market, and things like the way businesses will conduct themselves in ever more socially responsible ways, to really understand how we're going to address some of these major problems. And I think climate's a really good example, but you could think about it in terms of economic inequalities, healthcare disparities.
Right.
There are really many places that I think you really have to understand each of these problems in the context of a larger system. And I think that's a really important aspect of business education. And I would say, I'm probably taking too long to answer this question,
No.
but let me also just say that I think Clark's particular focus on these issues is really believing that our approach to education is embedded in the world, and in this case I'm talking about our neighborhood, our city, our region, but also that our mindset is that we can think differently, that we can challenge convention in order to change the world. And I think the business school's philosophy about being business driven but socially focused, which is another way, frankly, of saying socially responsible, right? Socially conscious, is a really, really important part of our difference in not just the way we approach education, but the way we can have a real impact on changing the world and affecting these problems.
Well, that's terrific. As you know, we have students at the School of Business from all over the world. China, India, Nepal, South America, Europe, domestically here in the United States. If you were trying to convey to many of the students, many of the folks that are perhaps watching us today, why Clark University School of Business and not 1,000 other schools of business? What makes us different?
I think first and foremost, I think the real power of Clark University is our size and scale. And the power that allows us is, students' names. You've taught here for nearly 20 years, right? You know students' names, and you stay in touch with them.
Yep.
Sometimes decades after they were in your classroom, right? It's hard to do that at some schools that just are much larger, thousands of students, and so there's a way in which there's a kind of familiarity, a kind of individual attention that you get at Clark in every program, including business. Again, there's a way in which the university sees its role as being embedded in this community, as having real world impact, that I think is particularly true. And I would say, my own experience, both as a student, as president, from talking to alums, from talking to current faculty and students, Clark University has an amazing degree of authenticity. It's real. And so I say, if you want a world-class, real-world, applied business education and experience, our school is second to none.
Great.
And I've been at many fine universities. I've talked to students and faculty there. We rival. Our approach to education, what we're able to offer students, rivals some of the best business schools and universities in the country.
Fantastic. Put on your soothsayer hat for a moment. Sort of project, as you have done here at Clark, moved us forward over your tenure because of your vision and because of your drive. What does the School of Business in your mind look like 5 years, 10 years from today?
Again, let me answer this in a couple of ways. First, people in positions like mine, I'd say even yours, work much more in probabilities than certainties, right? We don't have a crystal ball, but we use data to make informed decisions. We try to read markets. We try to understand trends. I would say the challenges that we face and folks in our positions elsewhere is the world is changing rapidly. It's ever more complex, and particularly higher education and professional education is changing more rapidly than seemingly anything else. And so I think predicting the future is even more difficult and challenging. At the same time, we see that the complexity of the world demands the education we provide, more important than ever before. So what I really see is a school that is adaptable, is nimble, is a school that sort of approaches, if we teach problem solving, the school itself has to take a problem solving approach to the evolution of its programs. But we have a tremendous foundation to build on. And I see the school becoming ever more innovative, ever more focused and relevant to real world problems. Again, because of size and scale, really focused on the individual needs of our students who do come from around the globe. It's one of our major strengths, is having international students and their perspective. Business doesn't operate the same way in every part of the world.
Right.
And many people can have a kind of myopic sense about that. So the fact that we bring students from around the world, we learn from them and they learn from students here is a really important, again, part of our approach to education, but I think it's a really important part of the way we evolve as an institution going forward. So I see an incredibly bright future, particularly under your leadership. I think that we have incredible faculty, we have great students, and there's every reason to believe that, again, as the market changes, we will be right there at the forefront of those changes and able to really distinguish ourselves as we already are.
It's wonderful. We're here with Dr. David Fithian, president of Clark University. Came to us both as a former Clark University student, went on to work at prestigious universities, Harvard and University of Chicago, and he's with us today to chat about his perception of the School of Business here at Clark University and what it can bring to society. I have one final question, Dr. Fithian. We have, as you've mentioned, students from all over the world. Many of our students are interested not only in our business education, but they're interested in gaming technology, they're interested in climate school perhaps, they're interested in psychology. You have talked extensively about removing silos or barriers for students to come to Clark and focusing on their business studies, but also take classes in a whole host of other arrays of education. Can you talk a little bit about this notion of collaboration and this true liberal arts expansion?
Sure. What you're speaking about, most people identify as interdisciplinarity, right? I would say more than that, it's about the kind of connectivity, even sort of systems approach that we have to take to understand the world. Everything's connected. And I think some of the problems, opportunities, fields of study that we're talking about, climate, human-computer interface, the role of technology, game design, both games for good and entertainment. Let's take games for a moment. You can't understand, if you're developing a game, how to keep somebody motivated when they lose if you don't understand something about psychology. How do you keep people playing the game? You can't create these fantastical worlds that games often allow if you don't understand something about history and culture and even anthropology. You can't develop a game if you don't understand something about commerce and the business world. And so I'd say similar things about climate and other problems that we've touched on today. So I see an interdisciplinary approach as being fundamental to the evolution of education, fundamental to the way we prepare our students. I often say to folks, what's our job as educators? Our job is to prepare people to be successful in the world, right? Along the way, they develop deeper understanding of themselves. They may grow into a version of themselves that they feel more fulfilled by, and that's wonderful, it's incredible. But the only way to really prepare students to be successful in the world, to be resourceful, to be resilient, to be inquisitive, is to expose them to as many areas as possible and to help them see the connections. So it is about skill building, it is about generating creative thought, inquisitiveness, things like that. But I see what we do at Clark as being right there at the intersection of people, technology, and the environment, right? Everything that we do revolves around how people think, how they feel, how they come to understand each other. you can't understand people if you don't understand the environment in which they live and work. And you can't imagine a future 5, 10, 20 years from now without the role of technology being fundamental to that. So I think that our sweet spot in how we think about our education, how we think about the future of the business school, our new climate school, is that intersection between people, environment, and technology.
Amazing. Dr. Fithian, thank you so much. We really appreciate your joining us today as our first guest on For Profit and for Good, sponsored by the Clark University School of Business. In future episodes of For Profit and for Good, we'll be exploring climate change and business, technology in business, and very specifically, artificial intelligence in business, generative AI, machine learning. How does artificial intelligence play in the role of accountants or in marketing analysts or in our finance studies? So we're going to be exploring technologies broadly, but specifically the use of AI in our business education. And we're also going to be bringing on not only an expert, but students who are now experiencing this power of using technology as part of their business education before they enter this new broad world that is now global. So thank you for joining us once again. Come back and we'll see you in our next episode of For Profit and for Good. Thank you.